perimeter because perimeter is probably the easiest. Okay. How do you find perimeter of anything? Say it again, Darian. Add up all the sides. Yep, perimeter. You're going to add up the sides. Area is a little bit different, okay? Area is a measurement of the space inside a figure, and it's almost always going to involve some multiplication, but what you're multiplying changes a little bit, okay? Ben, this paper in front of you? Okay, just making sure I gave it to you. Okay, so for area, there's a bunch of different formulas, and let's recap the formulas. I will be giving you the formulas on the exam. I'm going to give them to you. I'm going to give you a sheet with the formulas, but the most basic one is a rectangle. And a rectangle has a base and a height, otherwise known as length and width. Okay, doesn't matter to me what you call them. But the area of a rectangle is just those two things multiplied together, base times height. What about a square? What do you do for a square? Same thing, right? Except what's special about a square? Say it again. Okay, the sides are all equal, so the base and the height are really equal to each other. So what you sometimes see for a square is instead of calling them base and height, they just call them side and side because they're the same, okay? And then they write it like this: area equals s squared, because s times s is really s squared. If you're multiplying two of the exact same number together, it comes out to be s squared, okay? It doesn't bother me if you just think about it as base times height, but sometimes you'll need to think about it this way, depending on what the question's asking. Let's go over to some other quadrilaterals. Let's talk about a parallelogram. Parallelogram is really just like a slanted rectangle. And so actually the formula is exactly the same. Area equals base times height. Except where's the height? Okay, the height always has to make a what? Right. So it always has to make a right angle. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So the height is probably going to be inside the figure. Okay. It may also be out here. Okay, they may also write it in on the outside. Okay, that could be the height, but you've always got to look for a right angle. How about a trapezoid? There you go. Yep. Trapezoid's a little more complicated. Remember, a trapezoid has one set of parallel sides, two sides that are parallel to each other. And so really, instead of having just one base, like a parallelogram does, it has two bases. So it has base 1 and base 2. The height, just like before, needs to be straight up and down at a right angle. And so the formula looks like this: 1/2 times the height times base 1 plus base 2. You could also write that as, how do I want to say this? Height times base 1 plus base 2, and then that whole thing divided by 2. You could use either one of those formulas. This one just multiplies by 1/2. This one divides by 2 at the end. It's the same idea. Okay, so whichever one of those is less complicated for you to use for a trapezoid. Okay, what about a triangle? Anyone remember what to do for a triangle? Base times height divided by 2. Good. So what you have to remember again for the triangle is if it's not a right triangle, the height, just like with a parallelogram or a trapezoid, the height needs to be straight up and down at a right angle. So there's your height, there's your base, and the area could either be 1/2 base times height, or it could be base times height divided by 2. Either one of those is okay. Same idea for both. Okay. I think we have just one more shape that we're missing. Anyone know what it is? What other shape did we talk about? Rebecca? Circle, yep. Okay. Yep. Circles. Circles have a radius or a diameter. Okay, remember diameter goes all the way across. We just finished talking about circles, so I think radius and diameter you guys are pretty good on. What you're going to get mixed up on is which formula is which. Area is pi times radius squared, and you can only use the radius in that one. Circumference, which is like what of a circle? What do I mean when I say circumference? Area is everything inside. Circumference is the distance around it, right? Which is really the same thing as what of any other shape? Perimeter. Yeah. Circumference is like perimeter of a circle. Okay?
Isn't it like the same thing?
Well, it
It was
looks really similar. It does look similar to area, but it's not the same. The problem with circles is you can't add up the sides because there's no sides in a circle. But the circumference is either 2 times pi times radius, which looks like this one, but it's not the same because multiplying by 2 is not the same as squaring. Or you could just do pi times diameter, because really 2 times the radius makes the diameter. Okay? So circumference is 2 times pi times radius or pi times diameter. And remember that circumference is like the perimeter of a circle. Okay? So there's a recap of all your formulas. Anyone need me to flip back to that front page? Anyone miss writing anything down? Okay. Let's go back to that for a second. And then I want to do one type of problem as an example, and then we'll move on to our next chapter. See if I can zoom this out some. And see the whole thing. There we go. Yep, just like yesterday. Remember, all of these papers that you're taking the notes on at the beginning of class, I want you to keep them. You're going to turn them in with your exam review packet on Tuesday. Okay? Can I flip now? Okay, there's still one thing I want to do under area and perimeter. I want to do an example of something that I know you're going to see on the review, which means I also know you're going to see it on the test. It's a backwards area problem. Okay. Let's say I tell you that the base of a rectangle is, somebody give me a number. 8. Okay, base of a rectangle equals 8. And the area of that same rectangle, sure. Oh, that's the same numbers from the review packet. Let's go 32. Okay, area of the rectangle is 32.
4.
Hold on. Here's how I would set this up. How do you find area of a rectangle again? Base times height, right? So I would write out my formula. Area equals base times height. And then I'm going to plug numbers in where they go. So the 32 is my area, and the 8 is my base. So now I have 32 equals 8 times h. Now if I had an equation like that and I wanted to solve it, how would you solve it? You divide by 8, right? Divide by 8, divide by 8, and you would get 4 equals h.
Or you just-
Okay. If you, yeah, if it's numbers that you know your multiplication tables well enough with, yeah, it's not always going to be numbers that are easy like that. Okay, so if it gives you a problem where it gives you the area and then you have to figure out what some other piece is, write out the formula and then just plug in the numbers you know and start solving. Okay? Questions on any of that? Let me just take a quick glance at your packet, make sure there's nothing else in there that I'm going to talk about for today. You are going to have to know Pythag, which we actually did in our trig chapter, but you should know it for this too. So let's write this down. Okay, Pythagorean theorem. What's the formula for Pythag? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right, somebody besides Darian, tell me how to get these letters on this triangle. Tell me where they go. Rebecca? C goes across from the 90, yep. And then the A and the B are just the other two. Okay? So if I gave you this triangle, let's say, and I'm going to say this is 3 and this is 4, and I want the area and perimeter. Okay, area and perimeter. What are you going to do for area of that triangle? How do you do area of a triangle? Okay, so in this in this triangle, hi.
Hi, Jared.
Oh, Jared is not here today.
Not here? Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Which ones are the base and the height in this triangle? The 3 is the base and the 4 is the height, right? Because there's your right angle. So for area, I would just do 3 times 4 divided by 2, base times height divided by 2, and I get 6, right? Okay. And remember, we label these units as square units. For perimeter, what would I do? Darian?
3 squared plus 4 squared equals 6 squared.
Okay, now is doing that going to give me the perimeter? Why does Darian want to do 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared? Rebecca?
So you can find what C is.
Okay, so we need this side, and then for perimeter we would add these 3 sides together. Okay, so before I can do perimeter, I need to find this missing side, which I'm going to call C. So I'm running out of space here, but I'm going to do this off to the side. I'm going to do 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. Okay. 3 squared plus 4 squared, I'm going to put right in my calculator, and I get 25 equals c squared. And then I have to take a square root, right? So square root there, and I get 5 for c. Okay, sorry, that's kind of messy off to the side there. So now I know that this side length is really 5. Okay, what do I do to find perimeter then? Add them all up, right? 3 plus 4 plus 5 gives me 7 and 5 is 12. And those are just regular units. Okay, so you are going to see something like that on your review. You good with that? Do you still have room on your paper? Or do you need another sheet?